Hey, good Wednesday afternoon to you guys. Gabe DeArmond here in the Columbia Bureau. Mitchell Forde on the other end of an internet connection, also actually in Columbia for right now. We've got the 573 report coming your way this afternoon. That is brought to you by 573 Tees and 573tees.com here in Columbia. I'm actually wearing 573 Tees merchandise. See if I lean back. They made those for us. That's called marketing or cross promotion or something like that. I don't know, but you can get those shirts, actually, if you go to 573tees.com/collections/Power Mizzou. You can also get a lot of other things over there, mostly, tees, because that's what they make, but visors and plenty of clothing and apparel items. Mizzou, State of Missouri, Power Mizzou, whatever you want. Go check them out, 573tees.com. I was actually down in the shop on Saturday. And they said it's the busiest 2 weeks they've ever had. So you guys are doing good things. Keep doing it. Keep helping out our sponsors and the people who make these shows possible. Mitchell Forde joining me now. And, Mitch, I hope you are ready to break down the two deep for SEMO at offensive and defensive line.
Yeah, obviously, been staying up all night, getting filmed on the football black market of the FCS, studying the ins and outs of the SEMO Red Hawks. That's it. So yeah. There we go. Yeah.
Here's what I learned about SEMO, all of this directly from Eli Drinkwitz. In 3 years, they have blocked 12 kicks. Also, they do a lot of fake punts. That's the extent. I don't know if they are different fake punts. I don't know how many. I just know that they have done fake punts in the past.
And we should add that none of that is actually fact checked. I mean, we're just taking his word for it.
Could be. It is possible they have never in the history of the program run a fake punt. I have no idea. I'm tired of talking about SEMO. That's all I got. Anything else you want to say?
No. The only stat I will throw out there just to reinforce, if some people are actually going to be like, oh, I don't know, you never know, the other team could always win. Mizzou has played in their last 14 games with the FCS team since FCS became a team. They're 14-0. None of the games have ever been decided by less than 20 points. The average margin of victory, I think, was like 42 point something. And their last 3 games against SEMO have been a combined 136-6.
Yeah,
they could name the score.
All those numbers include inexplicably giving up 43 points to Missouri State one time. So it's actually likely to be worse than that. So all due respect to SEMO, I'm glad they can continue to run their athletic department for another year, but I got no interest in this game. So there's a couple different directions we can go, but we're going to start where the people want to start, and that is Shaw and Burden. So I'm assuming we're talking Aiden Shaw and Luther Burden here. Aiden Shaw, a basketball player from Blue Valley, 6'8", number 57 in the country, I believe, is making a decision on Friday. It is sometime between 10 a.m. and 11:30. We don't know exactly, what time zone's being quoted here, but he will make a decision Friday morning, and by all indications, Missouri is in solid shape in that decision. We don't. We haven't been told. Nobody's sure yet. But
right. No, there's no one has come out and told me it's a done deal in Charlotte, Missouri. Although I'm not sure I would tell you all if they had. But right. it really and truly, believe me, no one has. He has. I forget what his top 5 or 6 schools are right now: Oklahoma State, Kansas, Missouri,
Iowa and Arkansas, and Maryland.
Arkansas and Maryland. That's it. We think it really kind of came down to Missouri, Kansas, and Oklahoma State. I would be surprised if he was to take it Kansas right now. We'll see. I feel good about Missouri's chances, though. That's a long-winded way of saying that. I think Mizzou is going to end up landing him.
Yeah, and. Look, this is a big deal. This would be Conzo Martin's highest-rated commit since the class of, Porter, and Tillman, when Jeremiah was number 45, and he was actually the third highest-rated kid in that class. But this is the kind of guy that Missouri fans have been asking Conzo Martin to go get, right? I mean, hey, yeah, the transfers are nice. The diamonds in the rough are nice, but let's go see you get a top 100 kid, because Power 5 programs should be getting top 100 kids, and this is a top 100 kid.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I definitely think there's reason for, excitement about Shaw. He's a local kid too. Obviously not within the state, but very close, just over the border in Kansas. He's a kid in Missouri. Clearly identified early. They offered him in, gosh, I don't know, like January of 2020 or something like that. So he was a very early target in this class, and so got it done. He fits kind of the mold of what Conzo Martin's looking for. Long, can play multiple positions, very good defender. Can guard 1 through 5. I will say though, I think because Missouri fans have not been used to getting these top 100 kids in basketball over the last few years, and because of some of the offers that Aiden Shaw has, I do think expectations may have started to get a little bit high for him. And now I should preface by saying he hasn't even played his senior season of high school yet. Right. He could get better, obviously, but I think as of right now, you're not looking at a kid who's expected to come in and play 30 minutes a game and put Missouri's team on its back and lead him to a Sweet 16 or something like that. I think he's a kid who's widely regarded as a really good athlete, who has a really high ceiling, and who will probably play some because he can defend, but he's going to need some time to develop his skill.
Hey, I had somebody tell me today they thought reasonable expectations were like 6-4 his freshman year, which is like, that's good. People get these ideas in their head that, as a freshman you should come in and average 10-8. Like, a lot of dudes don't average 10-8 as juniors. And this is actually this is exactly where I think Missouri should live in basketball recruiting. Like, the top 15 kids are going to the places that make strong-ass offers. I mean, we all know that. They're going to the same places that they've always gone, and I don't think NIL or a lot of stuff is going to change that. Now, look, every now and then you get a Michael Porter situation or some other top 5 kid who's gone to a place where top 5 kids don't usually go. But the general rule is that level of kid, that the kids that wouldn't be in college except that they kind of have to be right now, are either going to the G League or they're going to one of about 6 schools. But that next wave, that's where Missouri should live and hasn't lived. From like 25 to 85. Those kids who, the truth of the matter is, even if you're the 30th ranked player in the country, you're maybe not necessarily coming into a high major team and starting and scoring double figures. Like, that's not how basketball always works. There are some of them, but those guys are generally ranked a little bit higher. So this is exactly the type of kid. He's going to be here a minimum of 3 years. And if he's not, it means he's gotten so much better that your program is better for having him. But I think the critics of Conzo Martin's recruiting have not been saying we need top 10 kids. They've been saying we need Aiden Shaw. That's the type of kid. And then go get 2 more Aiden Shaws to join him, and that's a really good class.
Right, yeah, you hit it there at the end. Of what I was going to say is that, Aiden Shaw, obviously a really good pickup for all the reasons we just mentioned. He can't be it. You got to get some more guys that can work. And you can do some of that through the transfer portal. And, we'll see what these transfers who they, added ended up looking like. But that is a very viable path forward for a school like Missouri that's not going to land super highly rated kids out of high school all the time. But there needs to be some. And, hope you hope for 1 or 2 basically every year of the, top 100, top 150 type kids who have the upside, who, maybe have some of the tools but just need to develop skill or something like that. And I think, Yaya Kita is also kind of a similar example, but you need more of those guys.
Right. You put those guys with Anton Brookshire and Trevon Brazil, who, look, I don't remember where those guys were rated, but they are high school prospects, right? And then you sprinkle in, like, the last 2 classes is kind of the path forward for Missouri getting back to Missouri fans where Missouri fans want. Whether it will work or not, I have no idea. Like, I don't know if Aiden Shaw is going to score 2 points or 22 points a game. I'm just saying This is, for those who have been critical, this is it. And we're now to the point where I never again want to talk about 2014 to 16. It's over. We're 5 years away from it. This is his program. He's built it. He's recruiting the way he recruits. And whatever he does going forward has absolutely nothing to do anymore with the guy who was here before him.
Right. The only reason I think we end up talking about Kim Anderson is because the people on the two extremes are so loud, which is, obviously something we see all the time. It's like, the people who are like, oh my gosh, we have to fire him immediately. And then the people who respond say, well, that's probably not very likely. He did take over this terrible situation. Like, we don't need to talk about either of those things. He's not getting fired after this year unless things totally implode or there's some sort of scandal off the court, which seems very unlikely if you know Konzo. And he's also not still, working with Kim Anderson players digging out of the Kim Anderson hole. Like, this is Konzo's team. He totally remade it. He brought in basically all of his own guys during the offseason. We'll see how it goes.
Well, fortunately, sports is the only place where the two extremes are really loud and the middle gets ignored. Okay, so the other thing that everybody wants to talk about is Luther Burden. He is announcing a top 3 on Friday. It will be, as Sean and I talked about yesterday, it will be Missouri and Georgia. And it will either be Oklahoma or Alabama. I don't know who the third one's going to be, and I really don't think it matters who the third one is going to be.
Yeah. I mean, that's consistent with everything we've heard. I don't know.
Could be SEMO could sneak in there.
That would be surprising. That would be a victory for SEMO, just from a publicity standpoint. I don't know. Recruitments like this, it's interesting because things can be factually right and then end up not coming true. Like if for some reason something happened where he ended up not committing to Missouri, there could be a lot of people who said he's going to commit to Missouri who could have been right at the time that he was absolutely favoring Missouri, but things could change. So I think that's why, you can never be sure of anything until the announcement is made public or the ink is dry. And in this case, with the announcement becoming before signing day, it is always going to be something to keep an eye on until an NLI is signed.
Right. And to give credit where it's due, Frank Cusimano tweeted last night that Luther would make an announcement on October 20th, which is 5 weeks from today, at East St. Louis High School. Now, I have not seen Luther retweet that. I have not seen Luther confirm that, but I know Frank knows plenty of people in St. Louis and knows the family, so I'm assuming Frank did not just kind of come up with that date. I'm assuming that date is accurate. Now, look, it is 35 days away, and we've all seen plenty of times change of plans, not going to be October 20th anymore. But for now, we are thinking we're 5 weeks away from at least the public end of this thing.
Right. Yeah. And so, obviously things can change between now and then, but, it seems like Missouri and its, people in St. Louis feel pretty good about him sticking around with the home state school. But like I said, nothing is a done deal.
Right. And so there are definite reasons to feel good about that. And we will, if he does indeed announce on October 20th, like we're already talking, we're 100% going to be there. I've not tried to do anything live from East St. Louis High School. I can't tell you what the internet situation is there and how possible that is, and that's not a statement about East St. Louis High School. That is a statement about every high school I've ever been to. Like, you just never know until you walk in the door. But if we can do something from there, we absolutely will. But either way, we would we'll go and cover the announcement unless for some reason somebody tells us in the 48 hours before, yeah, you probably don't need to drive over there for that. Then maybe that'll kind of tip you guys off. But that's where we're at.
And also, I want to say this about Luther Burden. I don't want to anoint him, and I think probably no matter what, he's going to have fairly unrealistic expectations.
Yes.
But when I was watching Rondale Robinson the other night, it did cross my mind, like, man, if Luther Burden could be that for Missouri, that would be big. Because we talked about on Monday, Mizzou didn't have that game breaker at receiver. That guy who you can either send down the field and he's going to make a play, or you can get him the ball in his hands as a punt returner, as a guy on a jet sweep or whatever, and he can make people miss. He can break tackles. He can make a big play happen out of a low risk, type of touch. So I'm not saying that's who he is going to be for sure. I'm not saying that's who he's going to be as a freshman. But I don't think that's like some insane bar. Like, there are people saying, oh, he's AJ Brown, he's Jeremy Macklin, whatever. Like, Wandale Robinson's a very good college player, and if he could be that, I think that would be huge for Missouri.
Yeah, and here's the other thing. Like, we were talking about the basketball rankings, right, and how Aiden Shaw maybe isn't that kid who the day he sets foot on campus. Well, Luther Burden is the number 6 player in the country. He is that. Like, that is the expectation of that level of recruit. I mean, I'm trying to get my internet to run simultaneously here so I can look up some of the previous number one receivers in the country. I mean, obviously Dorial Green-Beckham, and he had, I think, a little bit of an underwhelming, true freshman season. The number one receiver in the country last year was Julian Fleming. He has caught a couple passes at Ohio State. Now, the difference is there, he is behind Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, the top two pro prospects in the country, and Jackson Smith-Njigba, who had 100 yards last week. So he is walking into a different wide receiver room. But by the way, Smith-Njigba was number 4 in that class. So he had 100 yards in his second college game against Oregon, number 4 wide receiver. If we go back to 2019, the number one receiver in the country was Jaden Hazelwood, who went to Oklahoma. I don't frankly know a lot about him. But number 2 was George Pickens, who went to Georgia. And we saw what George Pickens did to Missouri last year. So while I agree expectations are going to be a little unrealistic, I don't know that crazy high expectations are unfair, because when you are ranked the number 6 player in the country, that is the type of player that people expect you to be.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, I do think that there is a sense of people thinking like, oh my gosh, get Luther Burden and Mizzou's go into the playoff
right,
or something like that, and without it expanding, and even if it does expand, it's going to take more than just that.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's 22 guys on the field, and I can't name a receiver that I legitimately thought, well, he took that team from like mediocre to elite. Not by himself.
Right.
Somebody got thrown the ball. Sure. But certainly the excitement is warranted. We understand why everybody is excited about the announcement. And, hey, there's only 35 more days to hype it up. So we can promise we will do that. We'll have 4 more 573 reports to talk about Luther Burden before he makes some sort of an announcement. And we'll also have 4 more Wednesdays to tell you guys to go down to 573 Tees there in Alley A, just between 9th and 10th Street in Columbia, if you want to go to the actual physical location. And pretty much somebody's there all the time. But if you want to do it online, a lot of people would prefer that. 573tees.com. You go there. You can get a shirt like the one I'm wearing. You can't have the one I'm actually wearing, but you can have one very similar to it. You can also have plenty of other Mizzou gear and plenty of stuff that they have. They do a great job, excellent customer service. It's truly a small local business, and they're going to take care of you guys. Tell them you're down there because you watched the show or because you're on Power Mizzou, and that's where you heard about them, and that'll be good for everybody. So not good for everybody, Mitch. Missouri's run defense, not great, Bob. I don't think Eli Drinkwitz or Steve Wilkes are huge fans of it either.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously they weren't going to come in. You would hope they weren't going to come in and try to defend it. I mean, Missouri is literally last in the country among Power 5 teams in run defense, and last in total defense.
Would it be going too far to say they haven't defended anything else, really?
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't gone super well. So, right. It basically, I mean, the questions we wanted to ask, I think yesterday, of Eli Drinkwitz and Steve Wilkes is just like, what kind of are the problems and how fixable are they? And part of it is, in a setting like that, coaches can't be completely honest, and they can't say, well, look, we don't have good enough players, because they have who they have, and they can't, I mean, they're not going to throw those guys under the bus.
There's no free agent market, no waiver wire, no trades. Yeah.
Right. So, Steve Wilkes basically said, look, it's on me. I accept full responsibility. And there are a few things, I think, from a scheme perspective that can be fixed. I mean, he mentioned, on the second play from scrimmage, Mizzou had 5 defensive linemen in the game. They thought Kentucky was opening in a jumbo package, put in 5 defensive linemen for the first 2 snaps, and Wan'Dale Robinson took that jet sweep 68 yards or whatever. That's a scheme thing. He mentioned he's going to try to go up to the box to try to get play calls in quicker. Maybe that helps a little bit. He talked a little bit. You asked the question about simplifying the scheme a little bit so that people can play a little bit faster. Maybe that helps. And there were some adjustments made in the second halves of both of these 2 games that make you say, okay, maybe it's not as bad as we've seen it at its worst. But I thought Eli Drinkwitz hinted at the real problem, even without saying it. Like I said, he couldn't, but he came kind of close. Yeah. And he basically said, we need some guys to step up and play better. You know, he said, we want to play more guys at linebackers, but the guys you're seeing are the only guys that have shown us they can do it even at all in practice. You know, he said at a certain point, you got to get off blocks. You got to fill gaps. You got to make tackles. Like, no scheme is going to work if those two things don't work. So, you know, I think that's probably the bigger issue. And yeah, we'll see how the guys respond to that.
Yeah, I want to get back to some of the comments in a minute, but Colby asked, and you mentioned it, Steve Wilkes moving up to the press box. Is that Drinkwitz telling him to, or is that Wilkes' call? First of all, I think it's probably Wilkes' call because, like, you know, he's been an NFL head coach. He is basically the head coach of the defense. Eli focuses 99.6% of his time on the offense. He lets Steve Wilkes handle the defense. But also, I just want to say, and I want to be clear, Colby, this is not like taking a shot at your question or anything. Every coach who's ever coached from the sideline thinks he's going to do a better job in the press box, and every coach who's ever coached in the press box thinks he's going to do a better job from the sideline. And you know the coaches who do the better jobs? The ones that have the best players. Like Nick Saban would win games coaching on Zoom right now. You know, so I really think where the offensive and defensive coordinators sit is perhaps the most overrated thing in football.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, you know, the only reason I brought it up is because he mentioned it yesterday. Right. And so, yeah, I don't think that's going to magically fix everything. You know, maybe I don't know. Maybe it helps, like he said, get the play calls in quicker or whatever. And maybe that you know, saves a big player too. But yeah, no, I think that is, you know, relatively far down the list in terms of remedies.
Well, here's what I think it mostly does. I think if Steve Wilkes is the guy up in the box and they've got the wrong personnel on the field, nobody else gets in trouble for that. That's Steve Wilkes. Yeah. He misidentified the package. It wasn't a GA or the defensive line coach, or I have no idea who it was, but you know, there is no other responsibility. That was his responsibility. So I think that's a good thing. But you know, I thought Drinkwitz and Wilkes were relatively forthcoming yesterday. And you know, like, I also think yesterday is a day, so often after losses, we hear the complaint, well, nobody asked the hard question. No, those questions were asked yesterday, and they were answered, and the coaches were not unhappy. They knew they were coming. I thought not only the part about, you know, we just don't have enough linebackers that are practicing well, but, I mean, he was asked a question about one of his starting linebackers, and, like, if you paused that long on a phone call before you answered, the other person would assume you had hung up on them. So he's not thrilled. Sure.
Yeah, no, the question was about Blaise Aldridge, and yeah, he basically just said he's been productive.
The numbers look good.
And I will say to Blaise Aldridge's credit, you know, we talked to him later in the afternoon. First of all, glad he did the interview because, you know, I'm sure he knew that some of the questions were going to be very pleasant. And he said at one point, like, you know, I apologize. I can play better. I need to play better. And that's a hard thing to get up there and do. So I'm not trying to bag on him by any means. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear that Drinkwitz wants a little more out of those guys.
Yeah. And look, like you said, can they simplify the scheme? I'm sure probably they can. And that might fix some of the things. But the bottom line here is a lot of times coaches say, well, these problems are all fixable. Well, yes, theoretically, missing tackles is fixable. Going to the wrong gap is fixable. Overrunning plays is fixable. But you know the players that fix those things? Players that are better and generally don't make those mistakes. I mean, I'm really not even trying to be funny, but, like, you know, if you see a receiver drop a pass every week and the coach keeps saying that's fixable, well, the best fix would be if he were a better receiver and he actually caught the passes. I mean, you know, it's not like I really don't think there's a lot of, well, because we practiced an extra 10 minutes on this on Tuesday, it didn't, like, I don't think it's that they don't know what to do or they don't know what the coaches want them to do or theoretically how to do it. I think it is more of a physically, they simply don't have enough guys that are capable of doing it right now, because people have asked about scheme changes on the defensive line. Well, defensive line is really about just beating the guy across from you for the most part. Missouri's problem up front right now is they don't have enough guys that are better than the guys they are standing across from. And I don't know how you get those guys until next year.
Right. Yeah. I think to a degree, there's some things you can do. I'm sure, and we've seen it in the second half. There's things you can do to mask the problems, and I think Steve Wilkes is still figuring out what the problems are because he hadn't seen these guys except against Missouri's offensive line, which doesn't look amazing. And even that was limited, not full contact. So I'm sure, there's ways to mask it. But yes, ultimately, and this is exactly what we said Monday. Ultimately, the only way to compete with an elite offensive line like Kentucky's or some of the better teams in the SEC is going to be get better players, and that is not something you can do mid-season unless you believe that Eli Drinkwitz has been keeping stashing a bunch of secret guys on his bench. Although he did say yesterday, I'm not doing that. He said I'd like to not run for 300 or not allow the opponent to run for 340 yards.
Right.
Breaking.
Yeah, and I can't remember if this was you and me talking on one of the shows we did, or maybe privately or somebody else. I do enough of these shows now that honestly I don't know what I say on the internet and what I just say in my regular life. But I think it is easier to scheme around talent deficiency on offense than it is on defense, because there are things you can do with misdirection and with formations and playing to a player's certain strength, but offense is forcing someone else to react. On defense, you are reacting to what they do, and so it's kind of hard to scheme around that. I mean, whether you run Missouri could have run a 9-1-1 on Saturday night, and I'm not sure they were tackling Chris Rodriguez.
I think that's what Steve Wilkes was calling. He was calling 9-1-1.
Right, that is what they ran, yeah. But 9 defensive linemen may not have stopped Chris Rodriguez in that game. So I guess that's my point, is offensively, an elite play caller, I think, can take – I mean, look at Mike Leach's whole career, right? He can take relatively average talent and make it significantly better. I don't really know how possible that is on defense on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah, I agree, especially when you're talking about up front, I think, because it's just, I mean, the raw physicality of it. There's just not that many tricks you can do. I mean, you can blitz, you can run stunts, but there's pretty easy and tried and true ways for an offense to beat that. So, yeah, I tend to agree. It's probably not what Missouri fans exactly want to hear, but this is not suddenly going to be a midseason turnaround where this is a top half of the SEC defense or anything like that. I don't think it's going to be the worst in the country, but I don't think it's getting a lot better anytime soon.
That's what I was going to say. It is unlikely to be the worst Power 5 defense in America by the end of the season. So I kind of want to wrap up on this. And my answer on this might actually be different than it was on Sunday morning. Did Saturday night change your overall outlook and opinion on the season?
Not drastically. I mean, I think it maybe lowered optimism a little bit. I still I know what you're going to say. You come into this season thinking Kentucky was a loss, and it was, and they only lost by a touchdown. And so in that sense, it's like, no, I still think they can win. I picked them to win 7 games with a loss to Kentucky and have a chance to possibly win 8, even with a loss to Kentucky. So I still think those things are on the table. I do think that, now all of a sudden, I think maybe 6 wins is probably more likely than 8. I still think 7 is what I would pick. But if you had to have me pick a second most likely outcome, it would probably be 6 instead of 8, just because, like you said, we're seeing issues that aren't just growing pains with the scheme. We're seeing things that are hard to fix. Now, also, I mean, like an Arkansas game that I initially thought it was a win, maybe not. Now that's a long way away, and also so many things can happen. Like all of a sudden, Boston College looks a lot more winnable. It's their starting quarterback's not going to play. The Tennessee game, who knows? They have quarterback issues as well, although their original guy wasn't that good. So I was going to say that makes him look better, or makes it look like a better outcome. It really doesn't. But yeah, so I'm kind of split, I guess. This is a boring answer. On one hand, I say no. On the other hand, I would still say 7's most likely. On the other, I think I would lean towards 6 being the second most likely instead of 8 versus the other way around preseason.
Yeah, my initial thought on Sunday morning, and I kind of wrote this a little bit on Saturday night, was, hey, I picked them to lose to Kentucky, and they lost to Kentucky, and so why is this anything that we didn't expect? But then the more I thought about it, first of all, they are +3 in turnovers this year. If they are even in turnovers, they are probably 0-2 with about a 24-point loss at Kentucky. I mean, I really think they had a fumble on the 1. They had another turnover that I think they turned into a touchdown. And so And then at Central Michigan, they were +2, and those were a big deal when they happened. So they are, I think, not as good as the scoreboard said they were in the first 2 weeks is what I'm saying. And there are certain ways that you lose that you say, okay, hey, that can happen. But if the way you are losing is the other team is handing the ball off and running for 6.5 yards every carry right up the middle, largely on the same plays, that now makes me think, Tennessee probably has a guy that can do that. South Carolina probably has a guy that can do that. Arkansas probably has a guy that can do that. So I'm not saying those are losses. I'm just saying that if before the season you had asked me, okay, BC, Tennessee, Arkansas, South Carolina, how many do they win? I'd have said minimum 3-1. And now I'm not as sure that's true. Now I think 2-2 is not out of the question in those games. I think they probably will go at least 2-2, but 2-2 is now on the table, which brings into the discussion that 6-6 that you were talking about.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't want to overreact too much to early in the season because that's what everyone does, and I often make fun of people for it. Who suddenly are saying, "Oh, this is a 4-win team." Like, I don't think so. But yes, I do think that you have to take a look at the fact, and I mentioned this after week 1. Like that game, Mizzou being +2 in the turnover margin. If they're not, that is a very very tight game, if not a loss. And this one, they were not, they just weren't the better team, like you said. Like,
I don't know.
And
they were the worst team by more than 7
like the S&P Plus or whatever Bill C does, but yeah. I know that he does like a predicted outcome based. I would guess that his predicted outcome for the Mizzou Kentucky game was like 21 points.
I would say at least 14. Yeah, no question. Yeah. But hey, who knows? Every week is different. I know they're going to win this weekend. I know they're not going to beat Georgia, almost certainly. Those are the two things I know about the rest of the season. And that's about it.
Yeah. I feel like, if we can't call Vanderbilt a win, the things have really gone off the rails. Yeah. That team is bad.
They are bad. Need to get Colorado State on the schedule, apparently. And avoid East Tennessee. The Buccaneers
watch out.
They got a tough unit down there in Murfreesboro.
Mizzou knows all about it. They would have been one of the teams on the list. The list of the 7 teams that FCS teams that beat FBS teams that we heard all about yesterday.
That's right. Look, it's not going to happen this weekend, but whatever. So I don't know. Anything else, man? I feel like we covered it all.
Yeah, no, I was saying, don't overreact to one loss or whatever. Like if it were to happen this week, yeah, absolutely shut down the program, fire everyone. Divert the money to men's swimming.
There's no such thing as overreacting to a loss this weekend. However, I also do think it's worth saying if they win 59-0 and SEMO has 12 yards rushing, I don't care. That doesn't mean the defense is fixed. If you write that, I will delete it, and you will not be allowed to write the following week. So, actually that's not true. You will write.
I might do that on purpose.
You will write double the following week. Let me change that.
Okay. Dang.
All right. Thanks, Mitch. We'll see you in a couple hours over at interviews. So thank you guys also for joining in and watching us here, and you can do that pretty much every day. We will not have a show tomorrow because, look, we're not doing an in-depth opponent breakdown of SEMO, which is what we usually do on Thursdays. We will be back. I'll be back on the Pick Show on Friday with Tim McKernan this week as the special guest gambler. So join us then. I think I can't remember what time we're going to air it on Friday, but you'll be able to see that on the site on Friday. SEMO game 11 a.m. We'll have pregame, postgame. Mitch and Joel will be over at the stadium. And thanks for watching. Thanks to 573Tees. Go check them out at 573tees.com. If you go there in person, make sure to tell them you heard about it on Power Mizzou. So thanks to everybody. We'll talk to you later.